see we are live, Robin.
All
Hi.
right, here we go. I'm
Hi.
excited to be here.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you're here. We're excited. And Tessa's really sorry that she can't be here today. She's just barely getting back into work. She's a groomer. And
Oh, I'm
there are yeah, and so we have essentials, right? We have essentials that are allowed. And these nails and this matting and all kinds of stuff, it really affects behavior and health, right?
Yep,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm.
Groomers are going to be swamped as soon as they're able to get people back in and people feel comfortable. So yeah, I can totally get it.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. So we were talking really fast before this. We were actually talking about what's going on now in houses and what's going to happen in houses in the future. So, again, enlighten us, because I think what you said was so important, that what you saw, oh gosh, on a normal day,
Right.
again, putting that in air quotes, was schedule changes.
Right. Yeah. So
Mm,
I had my training facility because I'm a certified trainer. So I've been doing dog training for 20 some years. And I remember when I had my training facility, we would always get calls when school started and when school ended. So that was the time that suddenly the household routine changed. And we always recognized that, okay, those times of years are going to get calls, because when household routines change, you often get dogs that react by destructive behavior or house training problems, or they just start acting differently. So I was saying that this has just been on such a larger magnitude, the change of suddenly having everybody home. And now, just as dogs get used to it, everyone's going to start going back to work again. So I feel like making sure those dogs are prepared, especially dogs that had any kind of anxiety prior to COVID-19. It's just, I think,
yes.
important to recognize that we need to help them through this transition, just like we're helping ourselves or helping our kids. We need to help
Yes.
our pets.
What do we look for? What do we look for? What, I mean, I can, we can all come up with the over the top behaviors. I almost called it obnoxious, but you know what I mean.
Right.
The
I,
dumpy,
I,
mouthy, what else?
I look at really the most obvious ones that usually show up are some of the obnoxious behaviors. The dog's more needy or clingy, but then you get what are very frustrating behaviors like chewing, or suddenly your dog doesn't normally destroy things, but now all of a sudden he's chewing things, or deciding to rip up clothing or whatever. And then house training issues is a big problem that will sometimes happen as well. So I recommend people now starting to go through their daily routine as if they were going to go to work or go to school or wherever they would go, and go through that routine of getting up, taking a shower, grabbing your keys, getting in your car, and physically leaving. And I would say keep a camera on at home, for just go away for 30 minutes, drive around if you don't have anywhere to go, or go somewhere and just see how your dog does. And again, especially for those dogs that had anxiety prior to COVID-19, you just want to kind of gauge their baseline now if you're going to leave them. So are they whining? Are they drooling? Are they pacing? Or are they just saying, okay, great, I have some time alone again? They're happy you've left. I don't know.
Exactly. Those Labradors that are just waiting for you to leave.
Exactly. But I
Just
think
let me have it long
trying
enough.
to see, just figuring that out now before the routine actually changes. And I'm sure you would have remedies to recommend for something like that, where you see distress in a dog.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, because that's the one thing that I found out doing, crisis management, as it would be like going to natural disasters. I found that the break in routine was really stressful for the dogs and horses too. Cats are like, feed me, pet me, and put me to sleep. Put me, on my side so I can sleep. But the dogs and the horses really react strongly to a change in schedule. Often, let me say, and very disruptive, taken care of by strangers or whatever that is. Or dandelion flower essence. I know it sounds so innocuous, but dandelion flower essence is fabulous. It's called the floral clock, because forever people watch that. They know the zenith of the day when the dandelion is full open, and then it begins to close. And I know, isn't that cool?
That is yeah. Well, now that you
Yeah.
said it, it makes sense, but I had never
Yeah.
thought of that before.
Yeah, so it's good for schedules. And again, we don't understand how, when we upset their schedule, it upsets their behavior. Sometimes, again, you and
Right.
I are talking I don't know, majority of the time or whatever, or the ultra sensitive ones. Here's the other thing. Let's really talk about, because I really want your input on this. How do the people leave the house? Of course, I would say, please, spray the area, spray the toys, the kennel, the bedding, whatever. But how do you suggest people leave the house? Grab your keys and go?
I just say do it as benignly as possible. So,
okay,
the worst thing for a dog who is anxious is to make a big deal of coming and going, because all you're doing then is highlighting what is a potentially a really stressful time for them. If your dog doesn't care, it doesn't matter. Give them a kiss, hug them, say goodbye, tell them 1,000 times how much you like them, and then leave. But for a dog that's anxious, that can actually make their anxiety worse. So we usually say, get your keys, say goodbye, walk out. Don't make a big deal about it. And same thing when you come home. Like, I would actually recommend, if you have an anxious dog, and this is so hard for us as the humans, the best thing you can do for an anxious dog is the first 5 to 10 minutes when you get home, completely ignore your dog. Like, don't even look at them.
Well, how? How do you do that?
I know.
Scratch in the back of your calves.
It's harder for us than it is for the dog, I think. But
okay,
if your dog doesn't have issues, then sure, come home and, pet them and play with them. But if you have a dog that's anxious already, then making a big deal of when you come home is actually going to make them worse. And the other thing we like to do when we leave a dog who's anxious is try to get them preoccupied with something to do that first 5 to 10 minutes that you're gone. So if they will eat, not every dog will eat when they're nervous. But if they will eat, then that's a great time to give them a stuffed Kong toy or a snuffle mat, or just even take a handful of kibble and throw it on the kitchen floor and walk out. That first few minutes, you're actually preoccupied, not worrying about the fact that you just left.
Okay, and snuffle mat. Some people don't know what that is. Could you explain it? And also, can we have a do it yourself? This is great. Okay, I love the shout out.
Real quick. I just happen to have my snuffle mat.
Okay, show us. See?
Okay. So this is just a grid. The grid with little hooks on the back. And then this was actually made by a friend of mine. She just took pieces of fleece that were all cut up into strips, and she just tied them onto the grid. So basically, I say it's like a shag carpet. If you're old enough to remember shag carpet, then all you do is a handful of kibble or food, whatever you want, and you just put it in this snuffle mat, and it's called a snuffle because then you put it on the floor and you'll hear your dog snuffling his nose as he tries to find those treats. And it looks like a silly thing, but my dog, I can give him treats in that and put it on the floor, and he'll be occupied with that for 10 or 15 minutes, just really trying to search. So it's real, and the dog's nose, obviously, we know how great a dog's nose is. So they just have fun. It's a mental enriching game, and it's a game that works their nose and feeds them. So it's a lot of things all at once for that dog.
Okay, perfect. I need to jump around because I've got so many questions. First of all, would you explain to us what CPDT KA is?
Yeah, that's a certification. As I said, I was a dog trainer, and I've been certified through the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers. So that CPDT means Certified Professional Dog Trainer. The KA means Knowledge Assessed, which means I've taken a test to show that I have the knowledge to be a dog trainer. And that CPDT is actually an independent body that does nothing but certify professional trainers. So it's not a school I went to. It's not, education I took from them. It's actually an independent third party that says, we're going to test you to see if you have the skills to be a dog trainer. So that's what that is. And I've had that certification for years. I have to do continuing education to renew it and keep it up to date, just like you would any, professional certification. So that's what that is.
That's wonderful. Here's a question I've got. So I was thinking about this because when I was looking through your bio, it's like, oh my gosh, you are all over the place in your career. And so author, mentor, business owner, and the conference co-coordinator. Let's talk about that conference that you did, which was absolutely amazing. Are you kidding? 2 days, 5 tracks going simultaneously, vendors, chat rooms.
Yeah, it was crazy. That conference it was a crazy experiment, but it worked really well. And we were really excited to bring that to the pet industry. And we were so excited to be able to partner with so many other organizations that are all in the pet industry, helping their piece of the pet industry, from APDT working with trainers, PSI, which is working with the pet sitters, Pet Boss Nation, which works with a lot of retailers, and then Paragon School of Pet Grooming, which works with groomers. So, and then the Dog Guru is obviously working with the daycare boarding facility. So it was really wonderful to just be able to work with so many groups. And the software we used was just kind of fun to learn about, because I'd never actually seen a virtual conference software. So where you could have an exhibit hall and you could run around into different rooms. I didn't know where to have my attention half the time. So it's very much like a real conference where you're like, oh, so much going on. So it was
and it's still accessible, right? It's still accessible. Can we sign in?
You can
somehow.
Yep, you can still sign in. If you were originally in the conference, then you still have till July 28th to watch everything. And there's tons of presentations out there. So it's all on demand now. You can still go to the exhibit hall. So if you originally signed up, you still have access. And then if you weren't signed up before, you actually can still buy a ticket. And you can go to thedoggurus.com/recover. That's for the website. And you can purchase a ticket and still have till July 28th to watch everything. And it has CEUs. So if you need CEUs, either for professional animal care or sort of CPDT, you can get CEUs through watching it too. So it's great.
Oh, those too. That's good to know. That's really good to know. And so how many presentations did you end up with? Because we ended
up with over 30 hours of content. I don't remember how many individual presentations, because they were all different lengths, but it's over 30 hours of content, 5 different tracks, like you said. And really, it's all geared towards helping pet businesses reopen and survive and thrive through this pandemic. So I think it turned out to be great. There's actually presentations I didn't get a chance to see that I'm going to go back and watch too.
And tell us what you think that biggest challenge is. I know it's terrible to do a broad assessment, but can you tell us what your major concern is, or
with COVID-19?
Yeah, with the reopening
I think the biggest challenge, really, because we work with primarily daycare and boarding facilities, the biggest challenge is that if we don't get things open and they get back, into a higher capacity than what they have now in their businesses, they've lost so much of their revenue right now. So it's just really a struggle to figure out sort of a new way of doing business that doesn't require dogs to be in their facility, because that's obviously how they make their money, is having dogs in their facility. So I think just getting the comfort level up where people are feeling comfortable enough to bring their dogs in, and even to we are seeing people now that are starting to visit family, so they're willing to take their dog in for a weekend while they go visit their family. But I think it's a challenge because people still don't 100% feel safe yet, doing all the normal things that they would do. But I think not just in the pet industry, but so many businesses are suffering right now. And how long can you do that before you have to permanently close? And that's the reality that a lot of them are facing.
Well, and again, because the news changes every day, it's a horrible wait and see. I think that some facilities are open, though, am I right, for first responders and healthcare workers?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that. How can we support that?
Yeah, there's several that are open that were considered essential business, and that sort of varies throughout the country and even sometimes within the state. But so those are still open, and you can still drop your dogs off or take time off and get a break. And I do say, for dogs that are used to going to daycare, the best thing you can do is at least start taking them back there a couple of times a week, so that it goes back to that routine. They get back into a routine. So I think it's a great way to just call your local facility to see, hey, are you guys still open? And they might be. For other places, they're not open yet, or they just chose to close, and they're waiting for the state to, start opening all of their businesses. So it's really kind of varies depending on where you live.
And a question is, maybe what we could do, kind of quote as customers, clients, start calling and saying, hey, there's 3 of us that really want to come in and, have our dogs socialize together or something, so
exactly.
Even so we can go ahead and
we've worked with a lot of people who have property and now they're just renting out their property. So you can at least get your dog out of the house and go take them down. Maybe you're just doing it by yourself, and you do, you know, you can still social distance, but now you have a place where you can actually throw the ball for your dog and it's safe and secure. We have places that have pools, so that might be an option. So yeah, definitely calling and seeing if there anything you can do. We know a lot of people that have just bought gift cards for future use. Then if you don't have, even just doing things like recommending them or, you know, sharing their social media posts, those don't cost any money, just to help raise awareness that that business is still there. So there's a lot you can do that run the gamut.
Yeah.
And I think that's for all kinds of businesses, restaurants or, you know, hotels are all in that same situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, we're almost in the, you know, pet industry service end of it.
Right. Exactly.
You know, how could, and that's going to be double hard hit. So author, mentor, business owner, conference coordinator, dog guru coordinator. What, you know, I hate to ask, but do you have a favorite, or do you have one that stands out to you?
That's a good question. I think at different times they've all been my favorite.
Okay.
I would say probably right now my favorite would be business owner and mentor. So I love owning my own business, but then I really, really find so much value in helping others. And that's the bulk of what the Dog Gurus does, is we mentor other businesses, either through online courses or through personal conversations or consulting or that kind of thing. And I really do love to see businesses succeed. So, which is part of why we did that virtual conference, because we just really wanted to help people. So, and
plus you allowed us to network together too, which was fabulous, because I've discovered people that I had never met yet. And so that was really good for me and for BlackWing Farms. Okay. So here's another question. Who got you into the animal industry? And I always say who, because it could be a person, an author, it could be an animal. You know, what brought you in that you've not left this industry?
That's the funniest thing is I grew up with not having any dogs at all. My mom and dad, we had 4 kids, and my dad was overseas a lot in the military. So I understand now, looking back on it, why I could never get a dog. But I always had dogs in the neighborhood that would just follow me around, and I was just always drawn to dogs. So when I ended up I wasn't thinking I was going to do a career in the animal field. I actually was in the Marine Corps, took off to go to a dog training school. So I asked my commanding officer if I could have time off to go to this dog training school, and he said yes. I came back from that school and I started just dabbling in dogs on the side, and people started wanting to pay me. So I thought, I had never thought about dog training being a career, but that's ended up really, I think it was those dogs that were in the neighborhood that followed me around that drew me to them. And then it was my own curiosity to learn more, and one thing led to the other. And I ended up, you know, now 20 some years later, continuing in that field.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And, you know, I talk a lot about, you know, literally service animals, medical detection animals, things like that are so important, and military animals, you know, the horses and the dogs. So some of those horses are, you know, I live near Camp Pendleton here in California, the Marine base, right. So they had that scrappy little horse from the Korean War. Was it the Korean War? Yeah. She was a little scrapper. She was like 14 hands high, but she just, you know, took that ammo and went through barbed wire, and they've got a full-on statue for her. So and again, you know, our canine heroes, you can't even list them. You couldn't fit them all in the state of California.
It is amazing.
Again, whether they followed you home from school or, you know, licked away your tears when you were having a nightmare, you know, it's that individual. So I love hearing that. And again, it's always a hoop. Here's a question that I've really been enjoying people answering. What's in your teacher's briefcase? What do you make sure you've got in your briefcase, whether it's for a phone call or an on-site visit or a seminar? What do you find?
I think I guess what I would call my superpower is sort of in the organization and efficiency realm. So nice. I feel like I have a lot of skills where I just can take things and make them a good system or a good process or whatever. But I think the other part of what I need and what I have learned to bring, at least, or in my teacher's briefcase is just a lot of patience, a lot of empathy, and just the ability to listen. Because sometimes I think early on, my sort of my way of approaching things, I think, is to look at it and go, okay, here's how you solve that problem. And that's just not always the best way. I think that's my Marine Corps background, is like how you solve that problem. But I have learned to, do a lot more listening. I think listening is so important to find out what's going on in that person's business or mind or family or whatever it is. And then I feel like I'm in a constant learning mode. So I feel like my briefcase there's constantly being things added to it just by different things I read or blogs I listen to, or, things on Facebook or whatever that I just add to it all the time. I don't think it's ever static. I think it's like one of those briefcases like on Harry Potter where you reach in and it's never ending.
I know. I was visualizing when you were talking about that. I was visualizing one of those old-fashioned horns that we used to, that you'd listen with. It was, literally a reverse megaphone. So, because a lot of times it is the nuance of the person and what they're saying, how they're saying it. And I think what I love is, I always, I call myself a forensic behaviorist, because I want to see your behavior, but then I'm going to backtrack. Gee, it looks like maybe there was a crisis or not enough handling. So I've had the divine privilege of working with, it's tough, but hoarders, slaughterhouse rescues, puppy mills. I've worked with some horrendous animals that have come out of that. And I think the primary thing is listening to them, reading that body language, and then looking at the people handling them. So I would go to shelters and I would say, I take a remedy and she goes, well, they don't listen to me. And I have something called teamwork. And I say, well, let's use some teamwork. I'll spray your hands, you gently pet the dog, and that's it. And I go, now, what do you want from the dog? She goes, I really want the dog to settle down and listen to me. And the dog is sitting looking at her. She's still looking at me. And I know you're laughing out loud because you see this all the time. So I sometimes I walk in and I say, what is your goal? What do you want from this animal on this day, so that they have something to look forward to and measure against? So it sounds like
I think that's so important. I think it's so important to know the goal. I know when I used to do my dog training classes and I had sort of here's what we're going to teach your dog. And then I learned after several years, there were some things I was teaching that people really didn't care about. So I was teaching them, and then I finally started saying, does this matter to you? And I mean, a lot of times the parents that sounds nice, but really my problem is over here. But I had to learn to start to say, well, what is it that's most important to you? And let's train that dog.
Ooh, I'm writing that one down. Hello, what's most important to you?
Right.
Yeah.
And then help them get there, because that's going to be more important anyway. So it's the same thing that you're talking about.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I've got one more. Did we do this? Best advice you ever got? Best advice you ever gave? This is just for you.
I think the best advice I ever got is from a person that I worked with very closely in Virginia. And he always said, when someone says something negative, and we tend to want to discount it because it's not true or whatever, he always said, look for the 1% of truth in whatever they're telling you.
Ooh,
work with that.
Wow.
Which really makes you look at, because, it's so easy to just disagree with someone and then they're just not seeing it the same way or whatever it is. And especially if it's a criticism of something you're doing, it's just easy to go, my way's the right way. But he always said, just look for, there's probably at least 1% of what they're saying is true. And I go back to that a lot, to say, let's not totally discount everything, and sometimes it's more than 1% if we're honest with ourselves.
If we're truly listening. Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I go back to a lot. And I don't know the best advice I've ever given. I mean, I think I give a lot of advice to a lot of pet businesses. I think the one I talk about the most is just the fact that being profitable and running a pet business are not mutually exclusive. And I feel like I say that more than anything else. And it's just really helping pet business owners understand how to run their business. Most people in the pet industry didn't start into it to make money. They started because they love dogs or they love animals.
Yeah.
And so, but then they find themselves a business owner without a lot of business education. So it's just helping them to see where those things can combine to make a living and take great care of the dog and provide a wonderful service. So I think that might be the thing I say the most often.
I think that is wonderful. It sounds like the mission statement for the Dog Guru.
Yes, it
does. It really does. So, speaking of which, I'm going to show this, and then we've already gone over 25 minutes. So, for more, more information, it's info@thedoggurus.com. So the doggurus.com will get us everywhere. It'll get us to the conference. It'll get us to what you do. It will possibly get us in contact with you, right?
Right, exactly.
And your partner's name in the Dog Gurus is?
Susan Briggs. She's the other co-founder. Yeah.
Right, right. So yeah, Susan was out of town. It's the only reason she didn't get her own screen.
She is at the beach right now.
Oh,
her happy place. So.
Oh my gosh, I am so glad. Anybody who can take a break, it's so important right now.
Yeah,
Robin,
happy to be down there.
Robin, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing the conference and all the hard work you do, and really that you will be doing.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, very, very grateful. Thanks, Robin.